Terry, people in national capitals around the world welcomed the new year last night. Here in the U.S., some 2 million revelers braved frigid temperatures for the celebration in New York Times Square. George Thomas brings us some of the sights and sounds.
From the far corners of the world, people welcomed 2018 with a bang. This was the scene above the Acropolis in Greece. Further east, in towns and cities once held by ISIS terrorists, crowds also gathered to welcome the new year. In places like Ukraine and Russia, where simmering tensions still continue following the crisis in Crimea, revelers were hoping for a more peaceful year ahead.
To be honest, it would be really great if these problems with Ukraine came to an end finally.
From Paris to Frankfurt, thousands braved frigid temperatures for that special moment.
It's incredible, beautiful, perfect. It's a little cold, but definitely worth it.
In Paris, which has been hit by a series of attacks in recent years, the celebrations took place under tight security. And speaking of cold temperatures, throngs of New Yorkers and tourists from around the world ushered in 2018 in what was officially the second coldest New Year celebrations on record.
I didn't expect it to be this cold. I knew it was going to be cold, but not this cold.
It was only 10 degrees in the Big Apple at midnight, but that clearly didn't stop these partiers.
First time for New Year's, yeah.
What do you think?
It was cold.
Yeah, it was cold. It was cold. Yeah, it was worth it though.
By the way, in case you are wondering, the coldest ball drop celebration was in 1917, when temperatures in New York City barely inched above 1 degree. George Thomas, CBN News.
At least 12 people have been killed in the ongoing protests across Iran. That is according to Iranian state television. The report says armed protesters attacked local police stations and military bases, but it did not say where the attacks took place. The protests began Thursday in Iran over economic issues. The demonstrations have spread to several cities and hundreds have been arrested. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un said today the United States should be aware his nuclear forces are now a reality, but he said they are not a threat. He made the announcement during his annual New Year's Day address on North Korean state television. He said the North has completed its arsenal and a nuclear button is on his desk. Kim added the entire U.S. mainland is within strike range, and the U.S. can never start a war against North Korea. Some local YMCAs, or Young Men's Christian Associations, often lack any sign they're Christian. But as Paul Strand reports now from Orlando, Florida, there's a movement to make the C for Christian in the YMCA shine again.
Pretty much everyone knows about the YMCA. The letters, though, have become like IRS or ESPN. People say them without knowing or thinking about what they stand for.
YMCA stands for Young Men's Christian Association. But some Ys forget that C in YMCA.
That's what Craig Seibert and others at the U.S. Mission Network want to change. He says George Williams, the man who started the YMCA in the 1800s, would have expected the C to be front and center because his Christianity also came first. Williams put that into practice where he worked simply by joining with a fellow believer to pray for each of their coworkers by name.
140 or 150 employees of Hitchcock and Rogers, where someone said you could not find a Christian there. After a 3-year period, that same person said you'd be hard-pressed not to find a believer in Hitchcock and Rogers. And so it really started as a workplace prayer movement.
Larry Whittlesey explains how those prayer warriors then began ministering to the young farm boys pouring into London at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
They got together and said, we have to find something a little more wholesome for these guys to do. So they started a prayer meeting. So the YMCA actually started with 11 other guys, George Williams and 11 other guys, as a prayer meeting in an upper room of all things.
In recent decades, this strong Christian foundation began to fade at some of the Ys it helped create.
It's only in the last generation or so that it's kind of shifted away to that toward physical fitness and some of the other great things that the Y does.
But what we're seeing right now, though, is a resurgence of these seeds that have been watered now are beginning to sprout. And we're seeing new sprouts of Christian ministry work and the lifting up of the sea in a new century.
One such sprout comes from transformational leadership and its founder, Ford Taylor. After failing at business, Taylor turned to the Bible.
Where I thought I was God's gift to business, reality is I was not at all. God has lots of principles for business, ministries, families, governments, schools, education system. And what happens is when you apply those principles, they work whether you believe Jesus is the Son of God or not.
Now Taylor's organization and others are working with Christians at WISE to bring those biblical principles alive again. U.S. Mission Network founder Bob Hall.
I think that this is the secret sauce. Coming back to our foundation, which is Jesus Christ, can do nothing but strengthen the YMCA movement.
One huge part of that massive rebuilding effort comes by WISE offering people much more help beyond their physical bodies.
And they encounter a marriage encounter, or financial peace university, or divorce career, or grief share. They can sense that God is still part of their lives. God can be introduced to them in a very safe way.
You find the possibility of real transformation because it is a safe place. It attracts people into that environment that would never find the either courage or the connection to come in into what they would perceive a more isolated environment.
It opens the door for all sorts of people to come through that would never go to a church or a counselor for those things.
This is the lifeblood of the association, and this is what will make the difference in people's lives.
One sign it's working, where there used to be just 10 chaplains in American WISE, now there are 65 with more coming, and the WISE are widespread.
Folks here hope that someday you'll be able to go into any Y, anywhere, not just have a great time, get fit, learn great life skills, but actually meet the author of life himself. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Orlando, Florida.